We'll start once the recording starts. So let us try to understand the concepts related to initiation of projects. The various points what we are going to discuss in the initiation of projects is the description or title of your project, scope of project, benefits and expected outcomes, project duration, project cost, project barriers or risks. So when we say this initiation phase of project or the initiation part of the project life cycle, then the various points which are under consideration, which are taken into account. One is the first and foremost, that is nothing but the description or title of your project. So we should be clear about what is the title of our project. There should not be any ambiguity in the project what we are going to execute. Even if you compare this with your final year project, then also you will try to correlate these things. When you are in the seventh semester, in the initial stage, your project life cycle is right from the day one of seventh semester up to the last day of semester 8, because that is the entire 2 academic semesters given for your projects. So when you start your project in the beginning of your semester 7, so initiation of your project involves what? The first thing what we do is we try to finalize what is the title of your project. So many times we conduct some presentations, we take some reviews, we ask you to discuss with your guide, discuss with your colleagues, you discuss within your team and try to finalize what is the title of your project. So same thing happens with the organizations when they are going for executing a particular project. So the initiation part starts with the first and foremost thing, that is nothing but deciding the title of your project and trying to decide the description of the variety of activities, or try to think on the description of the project so that you will come to know the exact idea about the project. Once the title is finalized, then second thing is deciding the scope of your project. So once we are in the process of deciding the scope of the project, so as we already have discussed about this word scope, when we say scope, we are trying to define the boundary of your project, that what is included and what is not included. Once this scope is clear, then only you will be able to focus on the required things and remove your attention from the unnecessary things which are not within the scope of your project. So that scope of the project needs to be defined, and uh, it should be recorded properly. Then next part is benefits or expected outcomes. So why this particular project is going to be carried out, what will be the possible benefits to the society, to the industry, to your customers, to maybe the government, to your country, to your own organization. So these all things we need to determine, we need to discuss, we need to record that what are the possible benefits out of this particular project, or what are the expected outcomes we are looking forward from this particular project. So again, if you correlate these two steps with your own project, once you decide the title, you try to find out the scope of your project. We normally exist in every presentation at the beginning stage, that you try to define your scope, whether you are simply going for designing a particular product, or you are going for design and development of a particular product, or you are going for design development and testing of a particular product. So this is going to give you a clear cut idea about what is the scope of your project. So, and once you decide the scope, you will be also trying to find out the expected outcomes. So normally if you see the uh, project synopsis we expect in the seventh semester, it includes these things only. What is the description and title of your project? What is the scope of your project? What are the possible benefits and expected outcomes from your project? What is the project duration? In our case, your final year project, the duration is already fixed. It is not in with your hand. So project duration is already given by university. It is for 2 academic semesters. But in industry, they need to give, they need to indicate tentative project duration, how much will be there to complete the particular project. In our case, what we insist regarding project duration is try to have the list of activities and how the activities are going to get completed. So duration required for individual activities that you should mention. Then project cost. So budgeting part is very essential. So tentative, how much cost, how much budget will be required for the particular project. So that is also essential. So again, correlating this with your final year projects, we always insist to have the financial analysis, budgeting part in the initial stage itself, so that if you find that a particular project is technically very good, the outcomes are very extremely good, but financially it is having a huge cost, and as a project team of 3 to 4 students, it will be not affordable for the team members to afford that particular cost. Then either you should find out some source of financer, some sponsor, either some industry or some organization or some government schemes through which you can apply for the financial help, or ultimately we need to skip that idea for the project and we should go for some different project. So costing is very essential. We should know how much will be the tentative cost of your project, and if that cost estimation is not proper, ultimately during the course of time, execution of project, you will come to know that you are not able to complete the project successfully because of these cost factors. So that is also very essential part in the initiation phase of your project. And then last part is project barriers and risks. So we need to identify what are the possible barriers, what are the possible hurdles, obstacles they will be coming into your path. Normally they are also called as roadblocks. So which will be preventing you to complete the project within time, within budget, within the boundaries of your scope, with expected quality. So we need to identify what will be the possible challenges, what will be the possible barriers, hurdles, and what are the risks involved in completion of this particular project. So these all things, they will be essential when you are trying to complete your when you are trying to complete the first phase of your project, that is initiation of projects. Then secondly, when we go for this initiation of the project, there are two study we need to conduct. One is pre-feasibility study and other is feasibility study. So before you go for feasibility study, there is one more, that is pre-feasibility study. In this pre-feasibility study, we are trying to understand, defining the scope, what to do and why. So that is the first part we are going to consider in the pre-feasibility study. Exactly what we are going to do and why we are going to do this. So that is nothing but all about defining the scope of your project. Then description of the market. So in which market you will be going to launch your product or the outcomes of your project, what are the expectations of the market, which are the potential customers, what are their demands, what will be the expected revenue which you are expecting from that particular market. So these all descriptions of your market we need to record. Then third thing what we have to consider is about the estimation of resources. So this resource estimation is Once you know what is the scope of your project, then we should be able to find out what are the resources required, and these resources from where you are going to get, whether you have the resources in house or whether the resources need to be borrowed from outside agencies, external agencies. What will be the cost required for borrowing the agents resources from external agencies? These resources, whenever we are going for estimation, again the resources will be human resources and non-human resources like material, equipment, machinery, transportation, infrastructure, finance, these all things. Next part is about cost analysis. So once you have defined the scope, once you have the estimation of resources, then next part is about determining the cost, determining the budgetary part of your project. Then next component we have to consider in the pre-feasibility study is the profit estimation. So whether execution of this particular project is giving you certain profits or not. If yes, then what is the estimation of the profit? How much profits you are going to earn through these projects, that we have to understand. And this profit estimation is one of the very key parameter in this pre-feasibility study, because ultimately the organizations, they are executing projects, they are working in the market for earning profits. So if the profit estimation gives you the indication that a certain project will be giving you very high profit, then that particular project will be given more attention. And last part in the pre-feasibility study is about the statement of major problems. So like we have studied or we have discussed about the barriers and risks. So the same thing, what will be the possible major problems that are expected in your project? So that we have to also take into account. So the statement of these major problems, that is also essential. After pre-feasibility study, we have to take into account the next component, that is about the feasibility study. So in feasibility study, the objectives for this feasibility study, they are listed as follows: ensuring technical and financial viability of the project. So we have to ensure the project is feasible technically and the project is also feasible financially. So whether the technical expertise is available or not, whether the technology what you are going to use is a proven technology or not, whether that technology is available with you or not, financially whether the project is feasible with respect to the availability of resources, cost estimation, and the profit estimation for this particular project. Then second objective for the feasibility study is assessing the contribution to social and national economy. So how your project is going to contribute to the social economy, or we can say the social aspects of your country and the national economy as a, in terms of the revenue generation. Like if we consider the project for this development of vaccines for COVID pandemic, huge contribution to the national economy, because you see the vaccine which has been developed by the Serum Institute, now they have got permission to give this particular vaccine worldwide, because WHO has approved that particular vaccine. So now if they are going to export that vaccine to multiple countries, ultimately the that export of the vaccines is going to make our national economy stronger, because that is going to contribute to have the foreign exchange, and that is going to develop the national economy. And also socially also it is going to contribute, because that is going to make a great impact on good health, or health of our nations of the country. It may be the people who are working in that front line, or the common people, but use of that vaccine is going to have a great impact on the social life of the people. So some projects, they may not be having very high profit estimations, but their contribution to social and national economy may also be a driving factor for conducting that particular project. So that is another objective for this feasibility study. Then third factor is selecting best factors of production, like technology, layout, product mix, capacity, input resources, etc. Particularly when you are going for certain projects which involve manufacturing facilities, then we need to consider best factors for production. Like it may be the latest technology, it may be your plant layout, how you are going for the product mix, if you have multiple products, to best utilize, to have the optimum utilization of your resources, what product mix you are going to undertake. I hope the people who are from mechanical, they must have studied about the linear programming problems in your PPC. So in that linear programming problems, you must have studied about the product mix problems. There are product A, B, C. So how much quantity for A should be produced, how much quantity for B should be produced, so that the constraints whatever are given for individual machines or individual facilities, they will be followed, but they will be optimum utilized. Then capacity of your organization with respect to manufacturing, with respect to the resource availability, with respect to the financial conditions, and input resources. So these are also the best factors which we have to select. Providing reliable estimate of project outcome. So whatever estimate we are recording for project outcome, whatever possible project outcomes we are trying to define, they should be there should be reliable estimate of that. There should not be any uh, picture which is created that this will be the huge benefits from the project, and in actual sense the benefits are not that much. So it should not happen. So in feasibility study, we should be ensured that whatever estimate we are making regarding the project outcomes, it should be a reliable project estimate, outcome estimate. Then providing basic data or information in the form of drawings and specifications to support the project during execution and operational phase. So in feasibility study, we should be clear about how the project is going to be executed. And when we say how the project is going to get executed, we should provide certain drawings and specifications to support this particular project, so that it will be easier during the execution and operational phase of your project. Like somebody, if you are going for a software project, then you may prepare a flowchart at the beginning, so that the logic of your software will be clear to everyone who is reading that particular document. So we should have that basic data or information in the form of, if it is a mechanical project, if it is a construction project, infrastructure project, let us say somebody is about to start construction of a building, construction of a residential complex. Then if there is no approved plan, if there is no drawing, if there is no uh, 2D 3D modeling for your particular residential complex what you are going to build, then it will be very difficult to understand, it will be very difficult to execute the particular project. So we should have a basic data, detailed information in the form of some drawing, because writing a paragraph and drawing a diagram, altogether they are different. When you are drawing a diagram, the things get more clear, there are certain specifications, so we need to be specific in what exactly we are going to do in that particular project. So that will be easier for the project team to execute and operate the particular project phases. The factors which are involved or the components of feasibility study, they are market analysis. So as we have discussed, we need to understand in which market we are going to launch the particular product or the outcomes of your project. So that market analysis must be very, very thoroughly done. Second part is about the technical analysis. When we say about the technical analysis, we must be ensured about the technology what we are going to use, the technical expertise what we need to have, whether the software, the equipments, the machinery, the technology what we need to have is available with us. If not, what will be the cost to hire that particular technology, that we should be aware of. Then financial and social economic analysis. So what are the benefits in terms of finance, financial aspects, and what are the benefits as we have discussed about the social aspects, social life of the people, and national economy as a whole, that we have to also understand. Cost benefit analysis. So how much cost is going to incur and what are the benefits from this particular project. So we should be clear about the investment and the possible outcomes, possible benefits from the particular project. So cost benefit analysis is also important, and you will also agree the cost benefit analysis, when we make, the cost should be less and the benefits has to be more as compared to the cost incurred, then only the project will be feasible financially. If the cost is more and the benefits are less, the cost benefit analysis also should indicate whether the benefits what we are getting, they are short term benefits or they are long term benefits. So that is also to be considered in the cost benefit analysis. Then another part in the feasibility study is clearances from various authorities. So normally when you want to execute certain project, when you want to start a particular project, before you start the project, we need to have the clearance or permissions from different authorities, right from the local authority to the highest authority in that particular field. Without those permissions, if you start the particular project, then at some point of time there may be a chance that you will require to stop the project work, because the further work will not be permitted by the concerned authorities. Especially these authorities means these are the authorities which are government authorities, government boards, government regulations. So it may be local authority like local body, which may be your gram panchayat, or it may be your municipal corporation, or it may be the district authorities, or it may be the authorities may be at the state level, or the authorities may be at the central government level. Sometimes the authorities may be at the global level. Like if Serum wants to export their vaccine to some other country, then WHO must have given approval to this vaccine, then only they are able to sell that particular vaccine to some other countries. So likewise, clearance from these specific authorities is very, very essential, because of, or if those clearances are not received, then at a particular point of time your project may be in trouble. The next component of this feasibility study is preparation of DPR, that is detailed project report. So when we say about the DPR, this detailed project report is very, very essential, because if you go to some sponsor, if you go to some financer and ask for financing the project, then he will ask, give your detailed project report. That report will be studied, and if that financing authority feels that that your project is feasible, your project is technically and financially viable, then only they will have clearance to sanction finance to your project. Let us say you go to some bank, you are in process of starting some your own venture, your own startup. So you go to bank. Now you must have heard about the various campaigns, various publicities regarding the Mudra loan for your startups that is declared by central government. The central government is encouraging young people like you to not to depend for employment but start generating employment by starting your own business, your own enterprise. And there is a scheme which is Startup India. And if you want to start your business through the Startup India, there are some specific provisions, some special scheme like Mudra loan, which is by available in various banks. Many government banks, they will be giving you the loan under this Mudra loan. But to get that loan sanctioned from the bank must be ensured that you will be repaying back the loan and your project is feasible. Otherwise, the bank is not going to give you the loan. It is not going to finance your project, your enterprise. So that's why this detailed project report should be prepared in such a way that all the parameters which are expected by the sponsoring authority, the financer, they will get included. So we'll come to that point also. What are the contents of this? And they should be represented in such a manner that the financer or the clearance giving authorities, they will be ensured that this particular project is really beneficial, it is technically viable, it is financially viable, it is the financial analysis is done properly, cost benefit analysis is also proper, and definitely the company or the organization is going to get benefited from this particular project. And last part is about the project appraisal. So how the performance of your project will be evaluated, that is project appraisal. Next part is about the detailed project report, the important document what needs to be submitted at multiple places. The authorities which will be giving permission to your project, the authorities which will be giving the financial support to your project, the authorities with whom you may be collaborating for doing this particular project, the agencies with whom you will have joint venture to carry out this particular project, and the probable customers to whom you will be expecting as the target audience for that particular project. So those all will go through this detailed project report and they will come to know whether that project is really beneficial or not. So the components of this detailed project report are executive summary. So this will be giving you the overall summary of the particular project what we are going to undertake. Organization details. So the organization which is going to execute this project, what are the details of that organization? So what that organization is all about, when it has established, when who is the promoter of that organization, who are the you can say directors for that organization, what are their credentials, which projects they have executed in past, what are their you can say what is the overall financial position of your organization. So all these details in brief, that will be there in the organizational details. Then operational details. So how the project is going to get operated, so that will be coming in the operational details. Project details, so the specifications with respect to the project, you can say the title, then the scope of your project, and some other detailed components regarding your project. Then next come is the cost of your project, how much is the expected cost, what are the budgetary components. So it may be in terms of the various phases, or it may be the cost may be given in terms of the various activities involved. The sources of finance. So which are the probable sources of finance identified, or they have been contacted for getting the project financed? That will be also indicated. Project status. So it may be if what is the status of your project at present. You may be submitting this details of time. So this project status may go on getting updated as and when you are submitting the detailed project report to certain authorities. Then profitability and risk analysis. So how much will be the profitability of the particular project? So that is also required. Then competitors, also we have to take into account the risk analysis. What are the probable risks and how you are going to respond to the risks which are identified for the project. Competitors analysis. So who are your competitors? What effect this project is going to make in your uh, competition with your competitors. So how you will be getting advantage of carrying out this particular project over your competitors. So that competitor analysis also is needed. Employment generation, direct and indirect. So how much employment you are expecting to get generated through this project. The employment may be direct, so the people will directly get jobs, or there may be certain indirect employment. So some indirect benefits, like if let us say in a particular area which is underdeveloped area, you start with certain project. So some people will get directly jobs inside that project. So that is nothing but the direct employment. But let us say somebody has started one small restaurant in front of that factory, in front of the gate of that particular project. As and when the project work starts, during the project work, and also the after the completion of that project work, when it is in actual execution phase, the project is operational, the people who are working in that organization, the people who are coming from different places to have some certain work in that particular project, they will go to that particular restaurant, and that restaurant will run properly because that project is in place. So that is nothing but the indirect employment. So that restaurant may have employed some 10 people. So those 10 people, they haven't got employment because of that project directly. They are not on roll of that particular organization. But because that project was executed at that location, that restaurant was started. And as that restaurant was started, some people got employment in that restaurant. So that is nothing but the indirect benefits, indirect employment generation through a particular project. So normally that's why in India also we say there must be more and more manufacturing sector development, so that more and more direct and indirect employment gets generated. If there are more and more projects or businesses which are in service sector, which are in consultancy, the employment generation is only limited, it is not huge. But when it is manufacturing facilities created, the direct employment as well as indirect employments, they are in huge numbers. So that also needs to be, especially when you are submitting DPR to the sanctioning authorities like some government offices, the government will be more interested to know what is the employment generation, direct and indirect, from your project, because the employment is a major concern for any government. People will be asking how many employment have been generated in your state. And this employment will be generated not only because of the government advertisements or government offices. So these employments can be generated in private sector because of the projects which are coming. So this will be one of the key area to get your project sanctioned by the respective authorities, because it is creating direct and indirect employments. Finally, the conclusion and annexures. In annexures, there may be certain reports, there may be certain drawings, there may be certain permissions which you have already got. There may be certain, uh, you can say, specific documents like some patents you have already registered for your project, or certain technology which you are going to use for the first time, the latest technology and the approvals from those vendors or the technology providers. So these additional information documents will be there in the annexure. The next part is related to selection of projects. So we need to consider how a project is going to get selected, what are the various models, and using these models, how the project will get selected. So as every organization has an appropriate mission statement and strategy, project must be selected that are consistent with the strategic goals of the organization. So that is quite obvious. Every organization has its own mission, vision, goals, and whatever projects they are going to select, those projects must be in line with the requirements, in line with the goals, in line with the vision and mission statement of your organization. Something which is deviating from your mission statement, vision statement, your goals, your strategies, that is not going to add any value to your organization, or altogether you will be required to have uh, a new set of things to execute that particular project. So it will become very difficult. So that's why the project has to be in line with the working style, the vision, mission, and goals of your organization. The project selection is process of evaluating individual projects or group of projects and then choosing to implement some set of them so that objectives of parent organization will be achieved. So the selection of project is nothing but what? It is a process of evaluating individual projects. So each project we have to evaluate thoroughly, or it may be a group of projects which are similar. They are clubbed together because they are similar projects. And if there are multiple projects grouped, we are going for evaluating them, and then we can decide that some set of projects will be trying to execute for which the objectives are getting achieved. As considerable uncertainty may surround one's initial notions of precisely how most projects will be carried out, what resources will be required, and how long it will take to complete the project, risk analysis must be introduced into the selection process. So there is always certain uh, uncertainty associated with the project's execution, and this uncertainty will be in terms of how the projects will be carried out, which resources will be required, what will be the duration to complete the project. So that's why the risk analysis, it must be introduced when you are going for the selection process of projects. And then third part is about project portfolio process. It is nothing but the process of selecting for implementation the set of projects that best meets the strategic goals of the organization. So when we say about the project portfolio process, we should try to select the group of projects, the set of projects which are best matching the strategic goals of your organization. We should not take some project from one area, some project from different area. It will going to hamper the product mix or the working of your organization. So the portfolio we have to select such that similar nature project, similar kind of projects, if they are selected, and if those projects they are best meeting the strategic goals of your organization, then definitely we should go for this selection of the projects. Then there are certain selection models for project. So these project selection models, they are depending upon the various criteria, various parameters are taken into account for project selection. The criteria which are considered, it is based upon the realism, capability of your organization, flexibility of the organization to execute the project, ease of use, how much it is easier to use, cost of your project, and easy computerization. So realism, capability, flexibility, ease of use, cost, and easy computerization. So 6 parameters. The projects will be selected. There are 2 different types of models available. One is non-numeric models. So qualitatively, we will be trying to analyze and decide the selection of project. And second part is about the quantitative analysis with respect to numeric models. So this numeric and non-numeric models both are widely used. Many organizations use both at the same time, or they use the models that are combinations of both. The non-numeric models, as the name implies, do not use numbers as inputs, so there is no calculation. But numeric models do, but the criteria being measured may be either objective or subjective. So there is no calculation, there is no formula, there is no number game if you go for non-numeric models. But if you go for numeric models, there is specific formula, there are certain calculation work, there are certain criteria, so that need to be adopted. It is important to remember that qualities of a project may be represented by numbers, and that subjective measures are not necessarily less useful or reliable than objective measures. So sometimes the qualities of your projects, they may be more considerable than what is represented by numbers for the particular project. So you can just go through this project selection models, how we should select. Let us try to understand some non-numeric models. Sacred cow. Project is suggested by a senior and powerful official in the organization. So we don't know why we are exactly going to carry out the project. There is no much analysis. But since the person or the group of people which are suggesting that this project should be executed, they are senior and powerful officials in your organization. So that's why we are simply, because they have said that this project we have to execute, the organization is going to execute the project because it is suggested by very senior people, powerful people in your organization, and you cannot deny them. So that's why the project name is Sacred Cow. The criteria or the project selection model, it is Sacred Cow model. Second criteria to select the project is operating necessity. So if your organization is required to execute that project so that your system will be in running, your system will be in operating condition, so then we undertake that particular project under this criteria, this model, that is operating necessity. So whether we are earning profits or not, that is immaterial, but at least our system should be in running. So to keep it running, so that at least in future we can execute some projects which are beneficial, which are giving more profits. If we don't undertake the project at this time, maybe our system will get hampered and we will not be able to take bigger projects, profitable projects in future. So that's why some projects are selected under this model, operating necessity, so that at least your system will be in place. your system will be in running condition. Next, competitive necessity. The project is necessary to sustain a competitive position. So if you have your competitors in market, they are doing that kind of projects, and if you don't undertake the projects, if you remain idle, then you may become, or you may be out of the competition. You will lose that bus. So to remain in the competition, to to have yourself in the market and sustaining your competitive position, you may need to undertake certain projects irrespective of understanding or considering the benefits or the profits which are earned. It is just to remain yourself in the competitive position, we need to take that project. So that is under competitive necessity model. Product line extension. So projects are judged on how they fit with current product line, fill a gap, strengthen a weak link, or extend the line in a new desirable. And if you have done the analysis of your products, and if you feel that doing a particular project is going to fill the gap, is with the same product line, you can have certain extension, you can have some additional benefits, then we are going to take that particular project under this product line extension model of project selection. And last is comparative benefit model. So if you are having several projects in hand, we will be going for analyzing the benefits what each project is going to have, and what are the benefits to your firm from individual projects. And based upon the comparison of the benefits which we are going to get from different projects, the most beneficial project will be selected. So that's why, as it is going for comparison of benefits, we say it is a comparative benefit model for project selection. So these: sacred cow, operating necessity, competitive necessity, product line extension, and comparative benefit model are the 5 non-numeric models for project selection.